Hello, everyone, and welcome to this fifth webinar in this year's CyberWise series. I'm Andrew Roberts, the Chief Cybersecurity Strategist here at MicroAge. I know I always say it, but I'm really happy to be here with you today. I love seeing so many repeat viewers for our webinars, but I also want to welcome the new people too. I think you'll find today's talk very useful. We're bringing you cybersecurity experts to talk about important topics that really matter to both you and your business, like today's talk on cybersecurity as a service. Before we get started, let me introduce the new people to MicroAge, an award-winning solution and service provider. Here at MicroAge, we're committed to bringing our clients the outstanding service and value that they have come to depend on. We work with thousands of companies, people like you, all across the country. And that allows us to bring cutting edge technology and best practices from one industry to another, from small companies to large companies, everywhere we go, and really make a difference in your business. We're also able to bring you the services that you need to turn your technology investments into ROI as fast and efficiently as possible. Nowhere is that more true than in cybersecurity. In the past, MicroAge has been known as a great place to get a quote for something. And while we can still do that, it's not where we add the most value. Bring us your cybersecurity problems and let our team of cybersecurity experts help you create a solution that meets your challenges both today and into the future. That's where you'll find the true value in what we have to offer. Now, before getting into today's session, just some simple housekeeping items. First, remember that today is the fifth in our series of 6 webinars that continues throughout the summer. If you have not registered for the next and final webinar, make sure that you do that. And second, if you have questions, please drop them into the chat and we'll do our best to get those answers, sorry. So let's get started, shall we? I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Mike Weaver, a sales engineer at Sophos, who's here today to share what he knows about cybersecurity as a service. Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. And like yourself, I am happy to be here with everybody as well. And today we're going to talk about managed detection and response and how with managed detection and response, also known as MDR, how we're able to deliver superior security outcomes through cybersecurity as a service. So we all know that there is a big cybersecurity challenge. You know, threats are accelerating in volume and sophistication. The way in which hackers and the bad guys are doing all the things they're doing these days, it is increasing in volume. But there's also the complexity of all the tools that are being used. One of the things I like to point out on this particular slide is if we look at that first bullet point here in the second section there, you know, organizations have more than 46 cybersecurity monitoring tools. Now, everybody don't have as many as that, but let's just look at a few of them. Endpoints, firewalls, email security, identity access management. So there's lots of components that are part of the cybersecurity challenge and the tools that we use to kind of help protect ourselves, but they are costly and they are complex. But more importantly, it's great that we can spend all this money and actually get protection for our networks. But as part of that security challenge, hiring and retaining experts to help protect your network. I mean, we're so understaffed in the IT world these days with cybersecurity specialists, people that actually understand cybersecurity. There's lots of IT administrators and such out there, but people that truly understand cybersecurity, that is a big challenge in having people that know what they're doing. So as a result of that, it's, you know, cybersecurity as a service for MDR, known as managed detection and response. And what that actually does for you is it gives you basically, it's like adding an instant SOC center, security operations center, to your environment. And with an MDR service, you're going to have expert-led threat hunting. So you're going to have a team of data scientists, people that understand cybersecurity, actually doing active threat hunting inside of your network to see if there's any active adversaries in your network. And they're going to do that 24/7. So 24/7, 365. And it also has the ability to offer some full-scale incident response and giving you superior cybersecurity outcomes. So as with a cybersecurity as a service, with an MDR service, managed detection and response, these are a lot of the things that it can help address. Now, we're going to go through quite a few things like how it works, what it looks like, and things like that. But really setting the stage here to really achieve a good cybersecurity infrastructure in your network, you really have to be doing things like proactively doing threat hunting. And to be honest with you, to a lot of IT people, threat hunting is just not part of their wheelhouse. I know I've been doing this for 20 plus years, and I'll have to admit, while I can do some threat hunting, it's not part of my wheelhouse that I have. So it's nice knowing that I have other people that have specialties in this and it can help out from a cybersecurity perspective. So how does MDR work? So how does managed detection and response work? So in today's environments, companies have quite a few, first of all, locations. They have users. They have applications that they use out in the cloud. So today's environments are complex and very dispersed. And as part of that, cybersecurity tools have been deployed across a lot of these environments. So companies have taken the time to actually put in tools to help protect them. As an example, email, so there's email security services. For your endpoint, you have endpoint protection on those devices. NDR, network detection and response. So now looking at your traffic flowing across your network, your firewall, identity access management. So all these are telemetry points. All these are areas in which potentially a hacker could also gain access to your network. So looking at all these things and correlating them all together, that's what becomes the big role for each person. Now, each role of all these different components plays a role in identifying threats. So obviously, and on an endpoint, we're going to use that to detect suspicious activity and malware. A firewall is going to look for things like intrusion attempts and beaconing. I'm not going to go through every one of these, but identity access management, my email security, making sure that we don't have, phishing emails or that somebody's stealing data from you. The cloud environment, or even your network. So all these play a role in identifying threats and can give me telemetry information. And when we combine alerts and things that are coming from these different disparate systems, it actually gives us a better picture of what's going on. So to give you an idea what I mean by that is, so think about it. So we get alerts from all these different systems, and most people, yes.
Sorry, I'm not sure the slides are where you are. What slide are you on?
I'm showing slide 16 on the screen.
Okay, we'll catch up. It looks like the slides aren't advancing for you, so you might have to do the next slide. We caught you up now.
Okay, all right, perfect. Okay, so when we take all these points of entry and we combine them together, it definitely gives us a better picture of what's going on. So think about if you just had an alert come in from an endpoint. So let's take a look at that first side there. So on the endpoint, it says, unknown process executions. That's an alert that came in on the endpoint. Okay, so there's an unknown process execution. Does that really tell me a story of what's going on? It can tell me it might be something that it might be something telling me that I need to look into it. But what if I was able to combine that with some other telemetry information? So around the same time, I also had an alert come in on my firewall that I had a DLP prevention. So DLP stands for data loss prevention. So we had a data loss prevention dual word there, come up on that particular IP address. So for that endpoint, because we can see that endpoint is using 10.0.0.33. Well, there was also another alert that came in on the firewall that showed us that there was some non-standard ports being used. So the insight this can give us by combining now both the endpoint and the firewall messages, by correlating those together, we can see that there was some potential data exfiltration attempts being occurred on that endpoint of, that's using 10.0.0.33. Now, I'm not going to go through all these, but let's just take a look at the last one as an example as well. So in this case, we're getting telemetry information from our email, from our endpoint, and from our identity access management. So if we look at the individual alerts there, so on our email, we see a suspected phishing email came into a user's inbox. We're also got some alerts coming from the endpoint saying that there was a suspicious file downloaded, and that there is an actual unexpected access to LSAS, a very viable tool that's used on networks. But also our identity access management also showed us an abnormal location login to O365. So things like, travel time. That's one way we can look at that from an identity access management. If somebody logs in the United States and then, an hour later there's a login in Europe somewhere, we know that's an impossible travel time, right? So identity access can give us some information there too. But we also saw another email alert that came out that there was a forwarding rule that was added to an external account was created. So the insight this can give us is that there was a successful phishing email attempt that resulted in unauthorized access and potential business email compromise. Because remember, there was a forwarding rule to an external account created. So there might have been some data exfiltration done there as well. But being able to combine these alerts together gives us a bigger picture so we can truly understand more of what's going on. But joining up this telemetry can be extremely hard. Why? Well, let's take a look at this. So these are actually true alerts from 3 different firewall vendors. So we have a firewall vendor A, B, and C. And the alerts that are coming in here, as we look at them, first of all, we can see that there's a big discrepancy of how much information and what information is conveyed in the actual firewall logs, right? Now, let's think about this, not just from a firewall perspective, but other points of telemetry. So we saw how different like tools can have such different alerts. We'll now multiply that by all the other different types of security tools that we may have across our organization. So in this case, you can see how different, a firewall log looks from an email telemetry and identity. And they could all be different even more from different email vendors or email security products. So taking and combining these together, that bigger picture, that becomes a hard thing for companies to do. So the reason why it's hard is a couple of things we already explained here. Is one is there's inconsistency in the way in which ratings are done. Some might have a 1 through 10, with 1 being the lowest. They might have a 1 to 5, with 1 being the highest. So there's different types of information provided by each different vendor. And not only that, we also have different types of information coming from the vendor, and the way that the alerts are reported are different as well. So it makes it increasingly hard or incredibly hard to actually join up all that telemetry information. But we saw how joining up telemetry information can actually give us a better picture of what's going on if we do have an active adversary inside of our network. So from an MDR security event flow, so what actually happens from all this telemetry information? Now I'm going to walk through and explain to you how Sophos does this real quickly. But this is kind of the same sort of event that you see from an MDR provider. So first, you have all these points of telemetry. So the telemetry information comes in and it's put into a data lake. And the data lake is where they now actually store all those alerts coming in. Now, from there, we're going to take and put it into what we call a detection pipeline. And with the detection pipeline, what we're going to do here is we're going to first ingest and filter all the telemetry information coming in. We want to get rid of all that unwanted noise. And then clean, we're going to transform that data into a normalized schema and we're going to map it to the MITRE framework. And in the MITRE framework, for those that might not be familiar with it, the MITRE framework is a common set of tools and technologies and tactics that are set up so that we have a common language that we can actually map alerts to from. It doesn't matter where those alerts are coming to. The MITRE framework just gives us that ability to now map that and make it something that we can all understand. We're gonna then enrich. We're gonna add additional third-party threat intelligence and context information. As an example, let's say like you have as part of your alert, part of that alert showed a remote public IP address. We can do things like do that lookup of that IP address automatically for you. Then we're going to correlate that. So we can correlate that into what we call clusters. And clusters are alerts that are based off of the entities and a MITRE attack framework categorization in time. So now that we made everything in a common language, let's correlate all those alerts coming in from your identity access manager, from your firewall, from your email security, from your endpoint. And now let's prioritize, let's score those alerts and clusters and rank them in order of prioritization. You know, which ones are actually, do we see could be a higher threat in your network compared to something else? And now let's escalate that so that now we can escalate that in those clusters and send those up for investigation. And with that investigation, allows us to see exactly everything. Once we have that and we're able to cluster those, I just want to go back to this slide right here. So once we have that, we escalate all that information. Now we can move that over to our MDR team and start looking at which things actually need a case created and which ones need to go to actual MDR operations to actually start working on a threat case there. So that's the tying up that process and how that all works. So an MDR provider sees something. Now what? Right? So they see something, now what's going to happen? And this is very important to understand. Whenever you are looking at a MDR provider, it is extremely important to understand what threat response is and what incident response is and what the differences are between the two. So threat response is what we can do when identifying malicious activity and adversarial activity, but the attack has not been fully deployed. So with threat response, we're gonna the act of containing that threat. Where incident response is what we do when there is an actual live attack in progress. And now we're actually going to take and do things to actually, so not just going to contain it, stop it from spreading, but now we want to do that incident response where we actually clean up the entire, clean up everything we actually saw. So take that a step further. When we start looking at this MDR workflow that we just saw just a few moments ago, taking now that we have the case creation and MDR operations, now let's take it a step further and a case was created. Now let's look at that response actions. So the first thing that we now want to do is we want to identify, right? Through the threat response and incident response process, Sophos, we take the direct action and we also make recommendations to what steps a customer should take should we not have the ability to do it. So for both threat response and incident response, we first start out by identifying the threat, looking at how the incident was discovered, the scope, the business impact, review all the detections, artifacts, and activity associated with the incident. And then we recommended actions might include maybe deploying the Sophos agent to unmanaged devices to help us have a more extensive visibility into all your devices. Containment. So we then go on to containment for the incident. Now the MDR's team main objective in this phase is to research the tools and the behaviors used by those threat actors to disrupt and eliminate the propagation of the threat. So in this case, we're going to remove all the malware and artifacts and we isolate the issues and systems if we can. Actions we could take include things like isolating an endpoint to prevent spreading, maybe killing a process to block some malicious code, or even maybe removing some malicious artifacts from the host, like the registry, files, tasks, etc. And then we might recommend some actions that the customer might take, like blocking command and control centers from your firewall. That might be an action that we recommend for you to help clean that up. And then neutralize. So with neutralize, when we start talking about incident response, when we neutralize the attack and identify and remove all the threat actor access to the impacted systems via root cause analysis. So we do this to take a look at, look at all of the attack, identifying and removing all those threat actor accesses, And we might, things we might do, some actions. We might analyze impacted systems for signs of additional artifacts. We might identify the threat actor and how the threat actor compromised that system. And as a result, some actions we might recommend to the customer is maybe some machines might need to be reimaged and or patched, or additional related user accounts to be reset or suspended because they were compromised. So once we look at that neutralization, now the last step is we're going to remediate, and that is the final stage of incident response is remediation. In this case, the MDR's team main objective in this phase is to return the normal operations within the customer's estate, and for us to provide a security posture improvement recommendations that we identify through the root cause analysis process. So when we look at these, once again, understanding the difference between threat response and incident response. With Sophos, we do have threat response, and this is where most MDR vendors that are out there, they do have the ability to identify and maybe do some containment, but taking that step further where you're actually truly neutralizing and remediating them out of the network, that is called full incident response. And that is something you definitely want to be careful of or be cognizant of what your MDR vendor can do. It's great if they can do threat response, but really what you're looking for is be able to take it that step further and really clean up everything with that full incident response. So partnering with Sophos and MicroAge. So with MicroAge, one of the things we first want to talk about here is that we all know that time is of the essence, right? And Gartner, as we all know, Gartner is a company out there that takes and makes product recommendations. They help define the IT security space as well as other things. And they actually initiated a survey where they wanted to see from companies that had their own internal SOC teams how long it actually took them to actually go from detection to remediation. And you can see here that the average time is 16 hours. So companies have their own internal SOC team. The average from going from detection to investigation to remediating is 16 hours, the slowest being 30, but the fastest being even 3.7 hours. With Sophos, because the way our endpoint products work, and we've been in this industry for such a long time, that we are able to actually eliminate or automatically block up to 99.98% of all the threats as they're coming in. So this helps us to get rid of a lot of stuff that we can block up front because we actually know that that's bad. So with Sophos, with our MDR team, from detection to remediation, so it takes about a minute to detect something, 25 minutes to do full investigation, and 12 minutes to do that full remediation. So 38 minutes is the average response time for Sophos. And when we talk about MDR, when vendors started building out their MDR solutions, we saw actually vendors taking two approaches to MDR as a service. So you have what we call your bring your own technology MDR vendor, as well as we have what we call single vendor MDR player. So what that means is, so when it's a bring your own technology vendor, these vendors chose to build their platforms that allow you to collect security data from multiple different sources. So they built their platform to be able to ingest information from all the different technologies that you already own. But that does give them limited ability to perform response interactions with you, as well as it's typically only guidance only, leaving you to implement and do the actions yourselves. There's a lot of times there's not a lot of hands-on involved there. Then a single vendor MDR player, what that means is they built their MDR service and tools homegrown. They built their own tools. In order for them to provide service to you, you then have to use their security tools. So that usually requires a rip and replace of your existing tools, right? But it does give you better cybersecurity visibility. It does give you a better MDR service because it's now integrated and they have better visibility because you are using their tools on top of your devices. Well, Sophos, up until about a year ago, Sophos played in the single vendor MDR space, meaning that in order for you to use Sophos, you had to rip and replace your existing cybersecurity tools in order to use Sophos. Well, Sophos, in advancements in our technologies, we actually now are hybrid. So we are the only hybrid on the market space today, meaning that we're the only company that actually does provide our own endpoint so that we can do a lot more things there from a protection perspective. But we also allow you to bring your own technology. So Sophos is the only vendor in the market space today that is a hybrid that does allow you to not only bring your own technology, so the technology, cybersecurity tools you've already invested in, as well as, if you want to use our endpoint tool or if you want to use your own, it doesn't matter. With Sophos, we are the best of both worlds, meaning that we can allow you to bring your own technology as well as you can choose to use our technology as well. And what that does for you is it gives us, for Sophos, it gives us two options for you. We have what we call our Sophos MDR Essentials and what we call our Sophos MDR Complete. And when we look at MDR providers, these are the kind of things you want to look for are what is included as part of your service tier. As I mentioned, most MDR vendors will offer a lot of the same things you see here, all the way up until we call the threat response. Now, remember, going back to that R, the R in response, there's threat response, and then which is basically just containment. And that's where most of the MDR vendors play and stop. But there are the options to do full-scale incident response, and that is actually something that Sophos has the ability to do. So not only can we help you contain an active threat that's going on, but we have the ability to do that full-scale incident response where threats are fully eliminated, where we're actually cleaning up and taking you back to that, returning you back to that normal operation status. Because I mentioned that Sophos allows you to bring your own technology as well as be a single vendor MDR player, we're a hybrid there. If you're already using products from Sophos and you use our MDR service, it's another way for us to look at those additional telemetry points, and we don't charge anything extra for you to do that. So if you're already using a Sophos product, we can also bring in that telemetry information from those devices since you're already using those tools from Sophos. But we also allow you to bring in and tie into your Microsoft Graph Security. So it allows you to look at all the things that you get. A lot of people get, as an example, Microsoft Defender with your Microsoft subscription. So I know, MicroAge is a huge Microsoft reseller, and I know that they can help you out with any of your Microsoft needs there. But with a lot of your different Microsoft packages, they do come with some of the different things, being like Microsoft Defender and some other things. But the Microsoft Graph Security, we can actually tie in that and pull telemetry information from there at no additional cost, as well as any third-party endpoint. So whether you want to use Sophos's endpoint product, or like I said, a lot of customers like to use Microsoft Defender because it's included with their Microsoft Graph Security or their Microsoft subscription. But these are all the things that we can get telemetry information from that doesn't require anything extra. But let's say you do want to bring in telemetry information from third parties. We have these integration packs that we add on, but allows us to now bring that telemetry information. As an example, adding a firewall telemetry pack allows us to now see if you want to continue to use, maybe using Sophos endpoint, but you are using a third-party firewall. So you're using a Checkpoint or SonicWall, whatever the firewall may be that you see here. Getting that firewall integration pack now allows us to see that telemetry information from, here again, bring your own technology. So you're able to bring in information from the different firewall vendors you see here, or public cloud, or identity access management. Or maybe you want to up your storage or all the logs and all the telemetry information that we put in the data lake. You can also increase that to a year for maybe you need to meet some compliance reasons. But those are the kind of things that we can add on, and that's how we can go from being just a single vendor MDR player to also allowing you to bring your own technology by adding on these integrations, giving you the ability to now add additional telemetry points of information there. And obviously, we're going to constantly give you weekly and monthly reports. And we're going to show you things that are happening inside of your network, as well as we're going to compare you to show you what's going on around the rest of the world and to show you some of the big threats that are going on around the world and whether we've seen any of that inside of your network as well. So just a quick, just a way to help keep you abreast of what's going on. And for those people that are on the accounting side, the people that are helping, they're letting you write those checks, they want to make sure that, that you're getting your bang for your buck. And that's what these things also allow you to do, is they help with your, with the monthly and weekly reports. It lets you see the kind of things that we're seeing and stopping within your network. And as a part of a Sophos customer, if you do use our Sophos MDR Complete product, so our MDR Complete, that does include a Sophos breach protection warranty, and that is up to $1 million worth of coverage, up to $1,000 per machine. But the nice thing about this, and a lot of companies do talk about their breach protection warranties. One of the nice things about Sophos is, as long as you're a customer of Sophos MDR Complete, you always had a breach protection warranty. It's not limited to the first year. It's not limited to you handing over all the keys to your kingdom in order to have that protection. So the Sophos breach protection warranty, that gives you that peace of mind that you have up to $1 million worth of coverage there. And that's just part of being a customer, a Sophos MDR Complete customer with MicroAge. You have that breach protection warranty there for you. So as I mentioned, Microsoft, a lot of people use Microsoft Defender because it's part of a lot of the Microsoft packages that they get. But what we find, though, is that 93% find the execution of essential security tasks challenging. Identifying the different signals, that is completely, that's a complex task to do. And what that leads our defenders doing is it leads to defenders then need to apply the insights and threat intelligence to understand the best course of action. And as I mentioned early on, a lot of people just don't have the wheelhouse to understand how to do the threat hunting or what to do next. That is where it's great to have an MDR provider. And the fact that we also stack on top of Microsoft Defender, this allows us to enhance the visibility and contextualize the Microsoft Defender alerts that come with maybe your E5 or E3 or E5 license. And it gives you immediate access to our security operations expert. So, if there's something going on, it's easy to pick up the phone, talk to MicroAge, talk to Sophos. We're here to make sure and to collect all this information you see, all these telemetry points, and adding it into as part of our complete tool. So with our Sophos MDR Essentials for Microsoft Defender, so whenever you're using Essentials, this allows you to use whatever endpoint vendor you want to use. So whenever you're using MDR Essentials, that means as part of that bring your own technology, where you can use your own endpoint vendor. But remember, the thing about Essentials, or when you're using your own endpoint vendor, your own third-party technologies, just be careful of the things that Sophos and MicroAge would be able to do as far as from a protection perspective. So we do give that ability to do that containment. But if you want that full-scale incident response, once again, you do need to be looking at the MDR Complete, because that is now at that point, in order to use the MDR Complete, it does require that you use the tool from Sophos. So something else this does help for you is your defenses that you select can affect your cybersecurity insurance. And what we're actually seeing is a lot of cybersecurity insurance companies. Now, Sophos does not sell cybersecurity insurance, but we do have some partnerships, some alignments that we have. And companies, cybersecurity insurance companies, they're actually, a lot of them are actually mandating that you actually have an MDR service to either one, get a policy, or two, greatly reduce your premiums. And in fact, just a little side note, Side Insurance, as an example, is one of them. If you are a Sophos MDR Essentials or Complete user, Side Insurance will actually guarantee that you will actually get a policy from them. So if you are having some issues, just something else to think about. But what cybersecurity insurance companies are also really driving the need or the requirement to have an MDR service. And just a couple things I just want to leave you with here real quick is that when you do look at other vendors, every vendor gets up in front of you and tells you the greatest thing since sliced bread. And not trying to do a commercial here for you, but I do want to show you how Gartner Peer Insights. So what this means is these are people that actually use the product. So people that actually use the product, Gartner Peer Insights, this is where they go and they actually rate our products and whether they rate the products and whether they would recommend it. And if we look at the MDR space here, you can see some of our biggest competitors and a couple of them that match us. But notice that little asterisk and notice here that where it says average rating and would recommend. This is based on 256 people going in and doing a Gartner Peer Insight review for us. So this is based on 256 reviews, and we still maintain with all those reviews a 4.8 average rating, and 97% of them say they would recommend our product. We look at these two from CrowdStrike and Arctic Wolf. I just want to make sure that you understand that these are vendors that had less than 50 customer reviews. So while these did have a good high rating, I'll give them that, but just bear in mind that to maintain a rating this high over 256 reviews is extremely difficult. And not only do we do that with our MDR space, but also with our endpoint, and as well as our firewalls. So Sophos, these are rated. These are not Sophos telling you how well we are. This is from people like yourselves that use our product and go out to Gartner Peer Insights and do these reviews. Same thing with the G2. So the G2 rating, Sophos, you can see their top rating for our MDR services. So we really do stand behind our product and do offer a good service to our customers. So partnering with Sophos and MicroAge is definitely something that will help you with, one, making sure that your infrastructure maintains the best security policies as possible, as well as maybe helping you do some things like reducing your cybersecurity insurance policies or premiums. So with that said, I know I've been talking for a few minutes here. Andrew, do we have any questions in the chat that anybody might like to ask?
Well, there's not any questions in the chat just yet, but we'll give them a couple of minutes. If anybody does have a question, please drop it in the chat. We'll make sure Mike answers that for you. And while we're waiting for them to do it, Mike, if I'm a CEO or a CFO and not a technical person, what would you tell me are the benefits of me making this investment, right? I'm not technical, so don't get techie on me. But why would I want to do this?
So why would we want to use an MDR service? Well, that's a great question. Well, the reasons for having an MDR solution is, one, as we kind of talked early on when we were talking about the cybersecurity challenges, is a lot of companies have a problem finding the or the employees that have the security background or the security knowledge to help them. There are a lot of people out there that have a lot of IT experience. So don't get me wrong there. There are a lot of people that have a lot of IT experience and a lot of IT professionals out there, but specializing and focusing on being able to do active threat hunting, being able to see, understand how somebody gained access to your network. A lot of people just don't have that expertise, and that's where having a cybersecurity service like an MDR service helps you to bridge that gap when you don't have that expertise to allow somebody that does have it. So that's just one thing. And then something else we just kind of mentioned too, Andrew, was it really does help with cybersecurity insurance policies. We do see cybersecurity insurance companies really dictating that you must be using an MDR service or in order to get a policy or to even just reduce your premiums.
Okay, good. That makes a lot of sense. And I know in my role, I've seen a lot of different MDR solutions out there, and really the difference that I've seen, the way they differentiate, they each differentiate themselves is really the R in MDR. Can you touch on that one more time?
Sure,
make sure
absolutely.
we cover that.
Sure, great. Thanks for asking that question. Because that is truly a key, one of the big differentiators you're going to find from different MDR providers, right? So what can they do? And so it's important to understand the big two that we talk about in the MDR space is containment versus complete incident response. And basically what that means is Containment is I see something going on, I'm going to stop it from spreading, right? So I'm stopping it from spreading, but I still might have some infected systems out there, right? And that's where now that particular MDR vendor may say, okay, here's what we recommend you do. You need to go do these things. When we talk about full incident response, so not just threat containment, but full incident response, now we're going to take it a step further, not just contain and stop that threat from spreading inside the network, but now we're going to do everything that's needed to actually clean up those systems, clean up any, whether maybe cleaning up registry files, deleting bad files off your network, closing ports, just a whole slew of things that can be done with the difference of that incident response versus just threat containment. So it truly is. That is a great question, Andrew. You really do want to make sure you understand once something is seen inside your network, what can your MDR provider do? Are they just containing it, or are they able to take it a step further and actually do that full incident response? Good question.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's actually, to be honest, I've seen a few solution providers where is let you know that something's happening. Right, they're not
Yes.
even truly containing for it at all. The response is an email. So with that, are you familiar with how Webroot works? There's a question in the chat about that, and I'm not particularly familiar with how Webroot works as far as
Yes.
that RR goes.
Yeah, so with Webroot, currently today it is not one of the endpoint vendors that we are compatible with. We saw on that previous slide. So Webroot is one that we plan to add. I don't have an ETA of when that's going to come to fruition, but we keep adding additional endpoint vendors along the way. So we're constantly adding firewall, all those integration packs, so all that telemetry information that we can get coming from other third-party systems. So we have to build that integration in, and so we do the masses first. So Webroot is on our list of one of the ones that we plan on adding. But currently today, in order to do you can still use your Webroot product. You can still use that product and use what we call our MDR Essentials. And there's just what we call an MDR sensor that loads on your devices. Now, there's a big difference between sensor versus agent. Agent, we all know, means that big thing. It's going to take up a lot of resources. A sensor just gives us the ability to pull telemetry information. So it's a very small, very lightweight. So if you want to use your own third-party endpoint tool, you can still do that. It's just we may not pull information from Webroot directly, but with a sensor, we can see what's going on with that endpoint.
Okay, great. Arnaldo, I hope that answered your question for you. We've got time for one more question real quick, like in under a minute. If we're going to do a pen test and I've got Sophos MDR, do I tell you guys about it or do I use it to test you as well?
Go ahead, use it and test us. Because the nice thing about pen testing is it does show you things that you think where your network might be protected, like an open port as an example. And a lot of people don't realize just an open port, what that can cause inside of a network. So pen testing, we always encourage people to do that. And as part of, I'm sure that's something you guys, that MicroAge offers is the pen testing. We encourage everybody to do that because that is the one way you can truly tell and make sure your network is completely you're completely covered, that you don't have holes and things in your network as an example.
Okay, great. Thanks. Looks like we're out of time, Mike. So thanks for sharing today. I know I learned a lot, and I hope the audience did too. And my many thanks to everyone who joined us today. I'm glad you could find a few minutes to share with us. Before you go, don't forget, we got one more webinar coming up in this CyberWise series. Make sure you register for that so you don't miss out. The webinar will be on September 13th. We're going to be talking about managed security services. And so I look forward to seeing you then. Bye, everyone.